everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Riley K. Jones. I'm a writer, teacher, and author tuber, and today we're going to talk about the 5 YA books that I hated. Now, just a little bit of disclaimer here. These are a list of books that I have read completely, and just they did not mesh with me. So if your favorite is on this list, I deeply apologize, but it just did not work with me. And I'm going to explain a little bit why I did not like these books and kind of go into some spoiler territory. But I will put warnings in for you if you want to skip over those spoilers. So we're gonna go in order from 5 being like it was okay like category to number 1 being the most book I dislike, that I absolutely hate. So first off, at number 5 we have They Wish They Were Us by Jessica Goodman. So this book I had a lot of expectation on because it is a dark academia thriller where someone was murdered in years past, and the main character kind of stumbles into being an investigator and trying to find out how her best friend died. She does attend a prep school, but it's not a boarding school. And there is this secret society that has been established. This society kind of helps certain individuals get ahead in their academics and things like that. So I loved that premise so much. But there's a couple points in the book that really fell for me. One was I did guess who it was, but it was still satisfactory. So it was kind of like a iffy kind of part for that where I guessed who it was, but I was satisfied with guessing it. It felt okay for that person to be the killer. The biggest thing I did not like with the book is the society itself used a lot of explicit sex stuff for teenagers and kind of blackmail, and it was just kind of awkward. And when the society used that, it felt dirty and gross and yeah, this is an issue and we need to fix it. Which it was kind of the guys were in charge, and so they would do weird things, funny skits with the new members to be we're acting this stuff out and it's it's funny because immaturity. And I didn't like that, but I didn't hate it being in the book because the author then later kind of pointed out that flaw in that, and we should be better, because then there was a female president of the society and she was trying to be better and not have that kind of what is it called, hazing treatments. She was trying not to do hazing treatments like that, but then she kind of started slipping into that because she was a girl in a guy's world type of thing. So that I didn't love, but I felt was purposeful for the book. It's not, it's kind of weird, but it worked for the book. The biggest thing that I have against the book is that there is a sex scene. A sex scene. It just felt way out of place for YA. I know there are some books that are be more edgy or to have that in there, and I'm of the camp that kind of stuff should not be in YA. I don't mind a quick fade to black, but for me as a reader, I did not like that for YA, especially because I am an adult reading YA, and it felt kind of creepy to read about teens having sex. It just was weird. I didn't like it. And I would have kind of excused it if it felt like it was necessary for the plot. She has sex with her boyfriend, but then the whole book she's been saying she needs to break up with him, and then waits till after that moment to break up with him. It just felt kind of weird. It wasn't she broke up with him because she thought maybe he was the killer or anything really connected to the mystery, which for a thriller, everything does need to be connected to the mystery in some way or another. It just didn't really work for me. And so that's why it's on my top 5 hated list. Coming in at number 4 is Killer Content by Kylie Roach. This one again is kind of similar to They Wish They Were Us. It's not that I hated the book, it just wasn't a fit for me at all. So I recently reviewed this book, so if you want to check out that lengthy review, you can click the card right above there. But it just had a lot of plot issues and things that I just didn't really like about the book. So it's not something that I loved and want to read more of or rave about. It just kind of was okay-ish book. So again, I didn't hate this book, but I did not like it whatsoever. It was a fast-paced book. It kept up pace pretty well. I was intrigued, but it had too much of like a Pretty Little Liars type of esque or Rivendell type of vibe, but like the weird Riverdale, like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like the creepy spookiness of Pretty Little Liars and Riverdale. It was just kind of like the cheesiness of that. Some of the plot twists were just kind of like that cheesy, unbelievable plot twist that didn't really like hit. Didn't really like, you know, it wasn't like a home run with them. They just kind of were like, yeah, so this happened and cool, we're gonna keep rolling on with it. Which again, like, may not be a terrible thing. Like, this might have been one of your favorite book reads for the last year, but for me, I was just expecting a little more sophistication, I think, as well as the point of views. Just, there was too many of them for the book to work really well. And there really wasn't a detective character. Like, the detective character, the one person who solves it, the one person who does everything, has a very, very small portion of the book. The rest is just kind of like, oh, what happened? Everything else is happening to them. Things are happening to them and they're reacting to them, and then things happen to them and they react to them, so on and so forth. It's not so much they're out trying to solve the murder. They just happen to solve the murder before the police adults, which I'm just kind of like, what? Especially with the way that it was written, it just did not make sense for them to solve it. Made more sense for the police to solve it. There was also other things in the police investigation that were just they were just unrealistic to have. And, you know, sometimes you can have the suspension of disbelief, and like, yes, you could have it done so fast, a police investigation, like, fast forward and feel real, but it just didn't, again, it just didn't land that feeling for me. So that's why it's on my number 4 list. I didn't hate the book, but there were moments that I was rolling my eyes at the characters. It just was a little not as sophisticated as I was hoping it to be. The next book on the list is People Like Us. People Like Us, I had some issues with. So I like the premise. You have 4 boarding school girls who are kind of like cliquey. They go to an all-girls school and a little bit like Mean Girl-esque, not like completely Mean Girl-esque, but they had their little group and they all had dark secrets, and someone sends our main character a threatening email threatening to expose her secret unless she exposes the secrets of her friends. Oh, I forgot about this. So also in the very beginning of the book, the 4 main girls discover that I think it was a friend of theirs or just another girl at their school was murdered, and they discover the body, which really cool premise. However, what I did not like about the book is really the antagonist. So the antagonist, and this is going to be complete spoilers, so you've been warned. I will put a timestamp for when I stop talking about spoilers, but this is spoilers. So the biggest reason why I hated this book was the antagonist. Now for me, I guessed who sent her the email within the first solving of the first clue, because she happens to run into this girl that like no one really likes, kind of like a Mona character from Pretty Little Liars. People don't really like her. So for some reason, she decides to help our main character because she has tech skills, like, I don't know. But then she like solves the clue just like that. Really fast, really like, that's highly suspicious. And then, of course, the main character's friend group are like, why are you hanging out with us? Why are you not hanging out with us anymore? And there's like kind of fighting between them. She kind of gets sucked into this antagonist person as her friend, but it ends up she was the murderer. Like, for me, it just did not work that she was the murderer, especially because it was so obvious that she was the killer. Like, she solved things way faster. Like, the other girl was more investigator solving things than our main character, which is just a huge red flag. Would have been nice would be if she thought she was the murderer, but she actually wasn't. Like, that would have been a nice reveal, a nice twist, because you're like, oh yeah, it's totally her, it's totally her. And then it's like, oh no, it was her other friend. Like, that would have been nice, but it wasn't. They also had the antagonist, a little bit about her. She had mental health issues, which it's really hard to like play that off well. And she was like a big fan of Shakespeare. And so because of that, she was weird. And I'm like, I love Shakespeare. What are you saying? What are you saying here? Because she likes Shakespeare, she's weird? Huh? So that was just kind of like I know she wasn't actually saying that, but it's kind of like made me like not like it a little bit more. But yeah, it just, that part didn't really fit well with me. I felt it was too obvious. I felt like it needed to be someone else if that is what you're going to be introducing at the beginning. And then like that's who it is, and you really need to sell it that's someone else for a long time, have them really focus on this other trail. But it just was like, this is the person. Why don't you see it? It's right there. Anyway, she's unreliable is that she doesn't tell you her actual secret. And then her secret is somehow she is responsible for her brother's death. And then I think at the end she kills herself. So there's also that in that book as well. But it's so like, it ends so abruptly. Like, she goes back into the lake where they found the dead girl's body, and she slips into oblivion like Ophelia from Hamlet. I'm thinking, it just, for me, I wasn't connecting with it. Yeah, it just was like not for me. Maybe it's a book for you. Maybe that's something that's up your alley, and you know, more power to you. But for me, it just did not work well. I was expecting some other delivery, and I was like also expecting just to be fooled a little bit more about the killer. Like, I really wanted it to be someone else. Once I called it from the beginning, there was a lot of issues. So yeah, not my favorite. Kind of on the hate list. Sorry. Next book that we'll be talking about are actually a pair of books, and they are a back-to-back kind of like dual saga. Like, there's a book and then a sequel. They're kind of like two parts of a whole in a way, but two separate, kind of separate investigations. Now, so for this like ranking, I put book number 1 as my most hated book and book number 2 as my second most hated book, because book number 2 was better than book number 1. Now, so I have to explain kind of book number 1 to get to book number 2. Now this I have talked about before. I have talked about these books on my channel. So if you have been watching some of those videos from the past, you may recognize these titles, and that is To Catch a Killer and to right their wrongs. And I forget the author's last name. It's like an SS name. But yeah, it just did not work for me. So these books. So we start off with Erin Blake, who is infamous because her mother was murdered when Erin was only a little child, and somehow she survived in the house for quite a long period of day, for like an 18-month-old or so. Then we flash forward, 16 years later, and she's been trying to figure out who killed her mom for the past 16 years. And then she discovers that she stumbles upon the body of her science teacher who is trying to help her figure out some forensic things for her mom's killer. She ends up dead and discovers the body, and it's like, what in the world? It's happened again. What are we gonna do? Love that premise, by the way. It was really cool. The first 5 chapters, wow, amazing. I want to read more. And then we got to about chapter 8, and things get a little weird. So I'm gonna start with some of my pet peeves about this book. One is just some of the writing style was a little, it sounded like an older person trying to sound like a teenager. So it just did not connect there. It's a lot of the lingo, a lot of the concept just felt like she was writing for younger people, but younger people when they were in the 90s or early 2000s style. But this was 2016, 2017 time period. So just there was a bit of disconnect. It felt like she was writing about her teens were millennials instead of being Gen Z, if that makes sense. So a lot of the lingo, a lot of the things of that nature just didn't feel like teens. It felt more like I was reading an adult mystery, just in that style sense. Another thing is one of her best friends, the main character's best friends, we get introduced to her as Spam. And I'm thinking, oh, what person would name their child Spam? This is so weird. And I triple checked and double checked and made sure that was her name in the first 2 acts of the book. Yes, that is her name. However, halfway through, around the midpoint, we find out her name is not Spam, it's Samantha. It was a nickname. You authors, you can't do that. Unless it's supposed to be this big reveal about oh, maybe it was Samantha who killed her. Then that would make sense to do that. But just it just felt so annoying to find out this halfway through the book. Her name's actually Samantha. That's something super minute, I know. There's more. So then we also have this romance plot where this boy that she has a crush on also happens to have a dead parent, a dead father, and someone murdered him, and they kind of bond over that a little bit, but there's a lot of explaining of his father's case. There's some weird we get off the trail of solving the dead science teacher and her dead mom to this one, so it's kind of just disjointed a little bit. It's not really weaved in very well. So I didn't love that, but I could forgive that, I get it. Sometimes you just need a few chapters to develop the romance. I get it. But see, we're not done here. And then halfway through the book, this person she idolizes who's in the FBI, and so this person is her mom's best friend's brother, and she idolizes him, and he comes into town to help solve this case of the dead science teacher. There were a couple chapters with him that they were trying to do this forensic thing, but the chapter was basically a glorified how to do article. It was how to figure out this thing, and I I get that she was trying to use real forensics. I love that. But it just didn't work with the humanity of the piece. It didn't flow in the right way. I think like she was onto something, but things like that just end up being glorified how-to wiki articles on like how to do something. And that was like the whole chapter was like how to do something. It's like, no, where is the like the character development? Where is the development of the mystery, the aspect, the relationships? Like that's what those chapters should be about all those pieces. And you can have them like doing a how-to article with it, but it needs to flow better. And just like dry how to do things, like repeating instructions, like So now we've not even got to the most thing that I did not like about this book is the villain. So again, this is one of those books that I called the villain. I was like, I think it's this person. And she never convinced me otherwise that it wasn't this person. The villain ended up being her principal. And here's how I figured out why it was the principal. The very, very beginning of the book, when after she discovers her science teacher's dead body, she arrives at school, and I guess she was like riding a bike or a scooter or something, and she had helmet hair, and her male principal comes up to her and pats her hair and fixes her hair for her. Sorry, I'm in education. You are not allowed to do that. I don't care if you like basically helped raise this kid because like, you know, it takes a community. That's weird. That's like red flag. Like, you can't touch a child. Even if it's like, you know, you're really close with them, you can't do that. Like, you just can't do that. Like, no. And like, he wasn't being like sexual. It was more like motherly. So another aspect of the book is she's trying to find out who is her dad, because she never knew who her dad was. And she thinks that her dad might have been the one who killed her mom, but she never met him. Her mom never talked about him. So there's kind of like that aspect. So I was like, oh, dude, it's this dude. And the main character is just like, yeah, whatever, like, cool. So something that I would have liked for this, it's a simple fix. You could keep him as the villain, 100%. That big of a red flag should have been like around the midpoint turn. You could have had him speaking, treating her a little bit differently, maybe excusing her for being late to school, and then her friends being like, yeah, Principal so-and-so, he always gives you special treatment, it's not fair. But that is a little bit not as like red flaggy as like touching an individual. Like, you could have had a touching individual like fixing her hair much later to kind of help cement the fact that he is sketchy. It came way too early in the book. Now, the piston assaults, or the really big thing that really made me not like this book is the climax. So the way the principal decides to kind of clean up the people who knew that it was him, he traps both the main character, her boyfriend, I think her friend, maybe both friends or just one of her friends, and the FBI guy, all in this car that the boyfriend was driving. And he's going to make it look like they had a carbon monoxide incident. And so the keys are in the car is running, the van's running, carbon dioxide is piling in. Everyone else is zip tied, they can't get out. And of course, when you're lose oxygen, you're not thinking very clearly. I understand all that. However, there's some things that I was like, it was just a little bit too, like, dumb. Somehow, I think the main character, she somehow gets out of her bonds, and I think even, like, the other people do too. So they try to, like, start breaking their windows with their bodies, which, okay, I know you need to get air, but I mean, the guy's van, I think, had like the roll down windows. So if your hands are free, you can just reach. I don't know. Some of you might be like, what is Riley talking about? But old cars used to have these handles where you can roll it and the window came down. And I'm just like, the adults should at least remember that. And I mean, like, these kids aren't that old. Maybe they remember. Maybe they had a car with the handles that roll down. But like, this is, I mean, even the guy who owned it should have known that. Like, this is what gets so stupid. But no, they're like throwing their bodies at the thing to break the windows. And then because the main character needs something to do, the adult tells her that she needs to like turn the car off or like get out and park or something. But she's like, I don't know how to drive. It just, yeah. The climax just did not make sense. It was so many plot holes and getting out of the car. And I understand, okay, yeah, you can kind of give a little bit of leeway because they're not thinking correctly because they have had a lot of oxygen, but you can do that. Or even if it didn't have the handle, because I can't remember, you can just push the button or unlock the car because the keys are in the car. So unless he like rigged it, which I don't think he did, so that way the car doesn't unlock, like, that's the only thing I can think of. But like, it did not make sense. So it would have made more sense if it was just the main character or just the main character and her boyfriend or something like that. But there is, yeah, it did not work. So that leads me into the second book. The second book was a little bit better. I think she definitely improved in her writing and her pacing and everything. It definitely was better, but there still were a lot of moments that the main characters, again, just didn't sound like teenagers. And in the second book, they're trying to find out what happened to her boyfriend's, his name is Journey, which is weird. What happened to his dad and who killed him. Honestly, I don't really remember who did it or whatever. Like, it just kind of was unmemorable. It definitely was a little bit better. One of the big things was in the first book, she sent out a DNA test to see if the FBI guy might be her father. They don't even like confirm. They're like, we don't need to know this or something weird like that. Like, I think you're my daughter and I'm gonna adopt you anyway. And it was just like, I don't know, it was just weird. Anyway, yeah, those two books I did not like. There was a lot of plot holes, a lot of like inconsistencies, just like poor writing, and yeah, it was kind of like a colossal waste of time, but not really a waste of time because I learned what not to do when writing a thriller. So those are the top 5 books that I did not like in YA thrillers. If any of those books were books that you really actually loved, let me know in the comments below like why you love those books so we can start a dialogue to see maybe there's something I'm missing. There's an element that I'm missing about those books that we can have a conversation about. Thank you guys so much again for watching this video. If you like this video, please make sure to give this video a nice big thumbs up. It lets me know that you like videos like this one. And if you haven't already, click subscribe. I release all new videos on all things writing and reading every Thursday. Thanks again so much. Keep writing, keep reading, and stay creative. Bye!